Hello everybody, I'm Chef Bruce Brown and welcome to the Ingles table. Today we are going to be making my salmon Parmesan quiche from scratch with real pie crust from scratch. I got everything that I needed from my local Ingles market, so what do you say? Let's get started. Pie crust. Pie crust can be the bane of a baker's existence because sometimes, depending on the weather and depending on what you put into it, sometimes it turns out, sometimes it doesn't. The most foolproof method I have for making pie crust uses my handy dandy food processor. So that's how we're gonna start today. In the food processor, I have about 1.5 cups to 1.75 cups of simple all-purpose flour. To this, I'm gonna add in about a teaspoon, maybe 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You always need a little bit of salt in your dough. I have a 1/4 cup of vegetable shortening. You have all your solid ingredients in here, the salt, the flour, and the shortening. We're just going to pulse this, start it up so that the shortening gets distributed throughout the flour until it looks kind of crumbly, almost like a cornmeal. Now, if you noticed, I'm not using a metal blade in my food processor. These food processors these days are usually equipped with a plastic blade that you are to use for making pie crust or bread dough. Trust me, it does the trick. It's wonderful. That looks good. Now, with it running on low, drizzle in some cold water, just enough. So all the flour is off the sides and the dough is starting to ball up. Once it starts collecting, I turn it up to high, and that's that. Guess what? We have a dough ball. We have pie crust. That's all it took to make pie crust for our quiche. Take it out if you'd like to let it sit. I like to let mine sit for about 15 minutes so that it takes all of the flour and it just kind of like moistens it all up, and it also firms up the dough just a bit. So we're done with the dough. And you roll it out, and I have a 9-inch cake pan that I cut a 9-inch circle out of parchment paper and put in the very bottom of the cake pan. Rolled out the dough, laid it on top, put it down into the corners, and then everything else left over hanging, I trimmed up with a pair of kitchen shears. Just turn around. Say I have about 1/2 to 1 inch on each side. We're gonna turn that extra dough up over the top, all the way around, just like this, and kind of pinch it to make an upper crust. Then I go back again, and I pinch it real quickly all the way around. It doesn't take much. And then, if you take your thumb and your first finger, put them into almost like a little together, hold it on the outside of the crust, and take your forefinger on your index finger on your opposite hand and push. We are making a fluted edge. Look at this, turn it a little bit more. This is all it actually takes. There we go, we have our pie crust ready to go. So we're going to make the custard. I have a container here with 8 broken eggs. We're gonna put them into a mixing bowl just like this. I like a little white pepper with my quiche. Maybe 1/2 teaspoon white pepper, stronger than black pepper, but I like the white pepper because you don't see it. There will be some people that'll see flecks of black pepper and they'll turn off because they don't like black pepper. Put white pepper in, it'll be invisible. And I'm going to freshly grate about 1 teaspoon of fresh ground nutmeg. Just like that, about 1 teaspoon of nutmeg. Then I'm gonna get my handy dandy immersion blender. And 2 cups of heavy cream. Take the immersion blender, put it down in. The more air that you beat into your eggs to start, the lighter and fluffier your quiche will be. Carefully pour in the heavy cream. And that's your custard. That's all you need for the custard. Now we get to actually make the quiche. So I have about 8 to 12 ounces of fresh salmon fillets, skinless, that I just lightly seasoned with salt and pepper and maybe a little lemon juice, and roasted them in the oven for about 12 minutes just to get them just so they're barely done. That's going to be the main filling for our quiche, but me personally, I really like having just a little bit of color in my quiche too. So take the quiche and your custard, and just to seal the bottom, I don't pre-bake my crust, but just to seal the bottom, take a ladle and put about maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of the custard mix in the bottom and swirl it around, just like this. By this time, you should be preheating your oven to 350 degrees. Now, it's salmon Parmesan quiche, but I need something a little bit sturdier than Parmesan to go in the bottom. So I always like putting a little additional white cheese, whether it's mozzarella, but since this is salmon, I'm using Monterey Jack here. The salmon, it's all crumbled up. We're just going to lightly sprinkle this all over. And when I make this quiche, I like using a lot of salmon. So like I said, this is probably closer to 12 ounces of salmon. It's not gonna hurt. The more salmon you have, the better it is. Now, on top of that, I have a tablespoon of drained capers. To me, there's nothing that says like Sunday brunch from up where I come from in Northern Ohio than lox and bagels, and we always had capers and red onions to go with our salmon on Sunday for brunch. And this year, just some minced up red onion, just a little around the top. We have our Parmesan cheese. 1 cup of Parm. This doesn't have to be exact. Just kind of spread it around the top. Just like that. Now we have all of our solids in. What do we need next? The rest of our custard. I know it kind of looks like a lot, but you'd be surprised. This custard is gonna go all over, so just a ladle full at a time. You don't wanna just pour it in. Do this carefully and slowly, and it will sink down in without disturbing all the solids underneath. That, my friends, you put into the preheated oven on a rimmed baking sheet, 350 degrees for a minimum of 1 hour. When it comes out, it's gonna be puffed up almost like a souffle, and you let it sit and rest for at least 30 minutes, just so you can go on ahead and let it recede back down the pan and cool so that you can cut the salmon quiche. And believe it or not, it comes out looking like that. Golden brown, the crust isn't burnt, it works out perfect. Trust me, you can do quiche at home. Believe it or not, it's not that hard. Give it a try. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Ingles table today. Be sure and check out the website for more tips, tricks, and recipes. Until then, I'll see you next time.